Hello, and welcome to Wrestling Academy. I am your headmaster. My name is Michael Klasek, and with me, as always, is your homecoming king, Samee Junio. Samee, how are you doing today?
I am doing very well today, Michael. How are you doing?
I've been feeling a little extra positive this week because of the
Oh my.
subjects of today's episode. I've been feeling the power of positivity. Today, we're
That's
talking
nice.
about the New Day here on Wrestling Academy. But before we fully jump into that,
Oh,
Samee, what
yes.
is Wrestling Academy? What is this podcast?
Wrestling Academy is a podcast that you, a lifelong fan, and me, a newer fan, have started in the hopes of sharing wrestling in a very fun, non-gatekeepery way. It is for older fans who have walked away from wrestling because of whatever reason. It's for newer fans who are walking towards wrestling with arms wide open. Wrestling Academy is here for you. Whatever you need, we got you, baby.
Yeah, we're here for you with arms wide open. Welcome to this place. We'll show you everything with arms wide open.
Girl.
And you could just hear everybody closing the tab. They're sick of this.
The retention we lost them. We lost them. Another thing that we lost is a grasp on a person.
In our Royal Rumble episode, we covered the 2008 Royal Rumble, and in the background of every single shot, there is a kid making goofy faces at the camera, and we don't know a single thing about him. All we know for a fact is that he's wearing a yellow Ween t-shirt. And so me and Samee have started a full-on True Detective, Unsolved Mysteries, X-Files-esque hunt where we've been trying to figure out hashtag who is Ween Kid.
Who is Ween Kid?
But I'll be honest with you, Samee, we've been running into dead end after dead end. And so if you know anything about the band Ween, if you know anything about what it's like to sit front row at a WWE live event, or if you are or know Ween Kid, we desperately need to get in contact with you. We have set up an anonymous tip line on our website. So if you want to know more, please visit our website and call the Ween Kid hotline and leave us a voicemail at 708-669-4512. That is 708-669-4512. And I'm going to just take full accountability here, Samee. The investigation took a dark turn this week. And
tell me more about that.
I appreciate you being cool and acting like nothing happened, but I'm going to be completely honest with the Wrestling Academy family here. I fully lashed out at Samee earlier this week, and I accused you of knowing something about Ween Kid and hiding it from me, as though this were a psychological thriller and you were protecting Ween Kid this whole time. I sent you some pretty aggressive some pretty aggressive voice notes and then a full-on video where I'm like, you know something and you're hiding it from me.
Yeah, and all of that stuff has been forwarded to the FBI at fbi@gmail.com. So if anything ever happens to me or Ween Kid, they have information. They have the information. Look, I really didn't take it personally. You're diving in with a lot of passion right now, and I'm just taking my time. I'm letting you pull at every thread possible, and I'm a slow burner. So I think whenever I feel like there's an avenue to explore, I can check in with you to see if you've checked it already, and if not, then I will skip down the merry lane.
We started Wrestling Academy to be a team, and we are a team. And why would you know who a random kid is from the Royal Rumble 2008? That's kind of a off-base conclusion that I came to that doesn't seem to be connected to reality at all. And I think I let my emotion and my passion get the best of me when I sent you, and I cannot stress this enough, a series of pretty searing voice memos and videos accusing you of a grand conspiracy that I now, in the light of day, that doesn't reflect my values and who I am. So I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, Samee, and I hope we can still continue to do this investigation together.
Oh, we can definitely continue this investigation. I will say, though, that if you send any more accusational voice memos or not. I'm going to peel back the curtain, as we like to say here on Wrestling Academy. You edit the video portions, and I edit the audio portions. And so if there are any other accusations or whatever, and I'm not saying that this is a threat, but this could happen where I will go ahead and throw in some of those voice notes in. That's all I'm saying.
So I do want to clarify that is absolutely a threat. And but here's the thing. I threatened you. You're threatening me back.
We're at an impasse now. We're good.
Yeah, I think we have fully become a true buddy detective thing where we just can't seem to be on the same page, but we're going to try to find the truth. That's all we have in common at this point.
We also love wrestling. That's our common thread.
We love wrestling. We love truth. We love justice. We love trying to figure out who Ween Kid is. So if you have any tips that's going to keep me and Samee from being at each other's throats, we would certainly appreciate it. Tag us on any of our socials. Use the hashtag Who is Ween Kid, or call the anonymous Ween Kid tip line and leave us a voicemail. 708-669-4512.
Good. I'm so glad that you're back on my team, and we are covering a team of 3 today. That's right, we're covering the New Day, Michael. You have mentioned before in a previous episode that you love the New Day, and they remind you a little bit of kind of like real life Ninja Turtles, correct?
Absolutely. I'm so excited to do this episode today, Samee. The New Day is one of, if not, I think in doing the research for today's episode, I think I came to the conclusion the New Day might be my favorite tag team, hands down, of all time. They are so talented and so fun. And when I took a long break from wrestling. And when I was getting back into wrestling, it was right around the time that the New Day was becoming super popular. So when I was getting reacclimated with the world of wrestling, the New Day was just a breath of fresh air that was funny, and they were fun, but they were also very good at what they did and performed so consistently at such a high level, and were also just really cool guys outside of wrestling and just in interviews, and anytime you heard them talk about the New Day, it was all just, it made me feel so good about these guys were friends. They're friends for real outside of this. They really care about the New Day. They care about each other, and they have continued to support each other throughout their careers. And it's just such a great positive constant, because you don't always hear about that kind of stuff happening in wrestling. And so this is just, to me, these guys are the total package. And I'm so excited to give them their own episode and dive in and learn a little bit more.
Absolutely. So the New Day is 3 people: Kofi Kingston, Xavier Woods, and Big E. And I don't want to pit you against 3 of your favorite your favorite tag team, but do you have a favorite member of the New Day?
I like them all individually for different reasons. Obviously, they're a trios team, so each one brings a little bit of difference. But at the time this is coming out, they just did the big WrestleMania press conference, and they had Big E there as just a talking head. And as soon as I saw him on screen, my heart just melted. I was like, man, I miss Big E so much. It's so great to have him back on my TV, because he suffered a pretty severe injury later in his career, and it's taken him out of action possibly forever. So we're always hoping Big E can come back, but if it doesn't make sense, we don't ever want him to get hurt. So we're just it was just good to see him. And then Kofi, I think, is just one of the most underrated wrestlers, point blank period, of all time. And so every time you see him in the ring, he's so effortlessly good and so effortlessly talented and innovative in a way that I think a lot of people have counted him out literally his entire career. And so when he's in the New Day, it's just, you get to see effortless talent. But I think if I had to choose, my favorite member of the New Day would be Xavier Woods. I think he embodies my favorite thing about wrestling, which I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I think if you're a fan of wrestling and you want to be a good fan, the number one thing you do is you play along. And so when you're at a live show, somebody's a heel, you boo them, or they're an underdog, you cheer for them. If that's what you want, like you could just legitimately not like the character. But if you like what's happening and you want to be a good fan, just play along with whatever they're doing. And I think that's great. And I think that also goes for when you're a performer inside of the story, play along with what the circumstances are. So if it's supposed to be funny, be funny. If it's supposed to be serious, be serious. Do all that kind of stuff. And I think Xavier Woods has such a great handle on that and is so good at being exactly what the story is calling for. And it's just a real chill, cool, funny guy. And so I think Xavier Woods, if I had to choose, but I love all three pretty much equally. And you can't go wrong with whoever your favorite is. Do you have a favorite, Samee?
I was really, really impressed and excited by Kofi because he's a high flyer. He moves fast. Everything he does looks so smooth too. Yeah. So if I had to choose, it would be Kofi, but I'd rather not choose. You know what I mean?
So Samee, let's not choose.
Let's not choose.
Ask me again. Who's my favorite? All three. Who's your favorite? All three.
All three. We love this. This is the power of positivity, which we'll get to shortly. So I want to start with just a brief bio of all three of these fellas, starting with Kofi Kingston. So he started wrestling in 2005, and he started out at WWE's developmental programs in 2006. So he was wrestling in 2005, and then he was with WWE and their umbrella of programs in 2006. He spent some time in ECW before getting drafted to Raw in 2008. Now, here we tiptoe into some dumb stuff that WWE does. Kofi is from Ghana, but somehow WWE talked him into his character being from Jamaica. So
complete with a accent.
Kofi has literally no attachment to Jamaica whatsoever, but thankfully, just after a few short years of committing fraud, he was able to finally be billed as someone from Ghana in 2009, and he is still the first African-born WWE champion, which I think is really, really cool. Good job, Kofi. As I was going through just research and stuff about Kofi, I heard a lot of the term mid-carder, and I can kind of glean what it means, but Michael, will you elaborate what a mid-carder is?
Sure. So a mid-carder is, when people talk about that, they're talking about the match card. So the flow of the night, the events, the things that are going. And so there's the top of the card, that'd be the WWE champion, that'd be the biggest stars in the company. And then you go a little further down, and the mid card is what's happening in the middle. So it's people who are more experienced than a rookie, but haven't quite reached that next level. And sometimes it's a talent issue. Sometimes it's a creative issue. Sometimes they've just been completely overlooked, or they get so good at a particular niche that the company doesn't see their talent beyond the niche they're fulfilling. And Kofi, we've both expressed, is very talented, but for whatever reason, it felt like the WWE never saw potential in him to be at the top of the card, to be the WWE champion, to be one of those top guys. So he was always in feuds that took place somewhere in the middle of the card. He was a mid-carder.
With that said, though, I feel like WWE has titles, championship titles for mid-carders, and Kofi, before 2014, when the New Day debuted, had earned some pretty serious gold. So he's had the Intercontinental Championship, he's had the World Tag Team Championship with CM Punk, and the United States Championship. So yeah, he was doing well.
I was listening to some interviews where Kofi was talking about where he was at before the New Day happened. And he talked about more or less being like, yeah, I had reached the absolute ceiling of what they thought I was capable of. So he's like, I can do a great match, but if they're only ever going to keep me at a certain level, I can only do so much. And so I think he was starting to be like, all right, I mean, this sort of seems like, is this the best anybody ever thinks I'm going to be able to do? And so I think it was really starting to get to him, because at the time the New Day comes around, he's been wrestling for 10 years at this point,
Mhm.
and so it's just 10 years of being in the exact same spot.
Which sucks because as you said, he's really, really innovative. And one thing that two things that I want to make note of is that even before the New Day started, he had earned a reputation of these wild ways that he was staying legal in Royal Rumble matches. And we touched on these before, but let's get into them again. So in 2012, he handstand walks himself back to the steel steps after somehow landing on his hands outside of the ring. In 2013, he lands on Tensai. Do you know who that is?
Yes. So Samee, you might know Tensai from when we were back in the Attitude Era and we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about Trish Stratus
Mm-hmm.
she was the manager of a tag team called Test and Albert. And
Yeah.
so Albert was a wrestler named Prince Albert. And
No.
so his whole deal was he had a lot of piercings. You could do the math on
Okay.
what that means. But then I guess truly 10 years later, they bring him back and his whole deal is just, oh, he's not Albert anymore. He's Lord Tensai. And it was one of those things. I had not seen Tensai since the Attitude Era. And when they brought him back, he truly came back and he had all this vaguely questionable Asian character tattoos on his body. And I remember being like, that's Albert. Why are they
So you
doing
knew
that?
immediately that it
I
was
knew
Albert.
immediately. I wasn't like, who's this new wrestler who's a badass? I was very confused, thinking to myself, who is Lord? Why are they making Albert into Lord Tensai? This feels very problematic, and I'm gonna just not engage with it any further. And I never did.
Great. Fantastic. Well, Kofi engaged with it by jumping on Tensai's back while Tensai was being eliminated from the Royal Rumble. Kofi lands on Tensai. He finds himself standing on the announcer's table, and he has no way of getting back to the ring. So what does he do? Well, he tells JBL to give him his announcer's chair. So Kofi stands on the chair and kind of pogo sticks his way back into the ring. That's probably the coolest way to get back into the ring. And I just really love that for you, Kofi. Thank you so much, Kofi.
And I want to say there was a stretch of time for years where everybody was extra excited for the Royal Rumble to come around because they knew
Mhm.
it was almost a reoccurring segment that was going to happen at every Royal Rumble. How is Kofi going to avoid being eliminated this year? And it was super fun, super exciting. And he had a years long streak where he would do something pretty fun
Mhm.
every single Royal Rumble.
Yeah, I only went up to 2014, but it continues, and it's still so mind-boggling that he was just held back as a mid-Carter while he's doing all this crazy fun stuff. He's making a moment for people to look forward to in Royal Rumble, which is like a match of moments, and he solidified his own little niche in there. I just think that that's really impressive. And not only is Kofi a Royal Rumble artist, he's also a menace with ladders, something that I feel like we kind of love here at Wrestling Academy. We love ladders.
We don't hate it. I'll say that.
And so in WrestleMania 26, and that's the WrestleMania that took place in 2010, if you're like me and don't know how the WrestleMania numbers coincide with what year, it's 2010, he used a broken ladder as stilts. And then at Money in the Bank 2014, Kofi basically, so there's a ladder already in the middle of the ring, and two people are on it. And then he takes another ladder and goes across the ropes and onto another rung of the standing ladder. Obviously, that's what I'm doing. And then he backdrops Seth Rollins onto the ladder bridge.
It's one of those moves when you see it, it's just, how can you not go, oh, ooh, you know, it's like
Yeah.
drinking hot cocoa on a winter's day. When you see somebody get back body dropped into a ladder, you just go, oh, it just feels so good. Being a
Feels
wrestling
so
fan,
bad.
oh, it feels great. I love this.
It was really just the innovation of that, of all of those things that I just rattled off about Kofi. Just what a guy. What a guy. And he's only one of three people in the New Day. So here comes some info on Big E. So Big E is quite an athlete. He was a wrestler in high school. He was a collegiate football player and a power lifter. So he started powerlifting before wrestling, but then he continued powerlifting for 2 years while he was wrestling. And Michael, it's time now to play a game.
Oh no. Oh no.
And it's called, would you like to guess Big E's powerlifting personal records according to Wikipedia? Question mark.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, Samee, I would love to play. I just want to give the caveat to the audience. I don't know anything about working out or lifting weights, so I don't even know a weight that I don't know if I'm going to guess insultingly low or insultingly high. So I'll try, but I don't even know what is good for being good, you know?
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and throw this number at you. Maybe it will contextualize things. Maybe it won't. So an average car weighs about 4,000 pounds. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful. I hope it's not. So
an average car weighs 4,000 pounds. Okay.
Yes. Okay. And here's the first round of Would You Like to Guess Big E's Powerlifting Personal Records according to Wikipedia? Michael.
Yes.
How much is Big E able to squat?
Okay. I'm going to show my work on this, so hopefully you can see why I get to the number I get to. So a squat, that's where you put the weight on your shoulders and you're lifting with your legs pretty much, right?
Well, you're going down.
Yes.
You're going down.
That's a squat, right?
Yes.
You said a car weighs 4,000 pounds. So here's something I've heard of.
Okay.
When children get trapped under cars, sometimes parents are able to access an amount of strength to where they can lift up the car, and that's kind of a squat. And so I'm going to say if an average parent in distress can do it, then a power lifter who's trained can definitely also do it. So I'm going to say he can squat 8,000 pounds. Is that too much? Is that did I way overshoot it? Because I think if an average parent in distress can lift the one, then a trained person could probably lift two, right? Or am I? Well, how far? You made a reaction. How far off base am I?
Quite a bit. Here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say when we're talking about the parents in distress saving their children, they're usually tilting something up, which is different from like.
Yeah, they don't have the car. They don't have the car on their shoulders. They're okay.
But I will give you the number. It is 711 pounds that he can squat.
Yeah, quite a bit lower than 8,000 pounds.
Yeah, dude. Could you imagine like walking into the gym and seeing somebody stacking weights to be 8,000 pounds?
You could tell me anything weighs anything at the gym. I would believe you.
Great. I weigh 20 pounds.
Okay. I believe you. So, this is Samee. This is great info. I've now learned 8,000 pounds. That's too much for a human. That's what I'm learning. Okay. So I can't wait. I can't wait to adjust and we'll see where I get. Okay.
Okay. The second question is, the second item is bench press.
Yes.
How much is Big E's powerlifting personal record for bench pressing in 2011?
Okay, so that's this one, right? Where you're laying on your back and you're just juicing it straight up. A car weighs 4,000 pounds.
Yes.
And you laughed at me when I said people could lift a car. So
I laughed with you.
It's less than 4,000. That's what I know. That's where I'm starting.
Maybe.
Okay. 4,000 pounds. That's too much.
I think it might be helpful to think about the muscles engaging in a
but if you've ever seen Big E, my man is yoked in his chest. So
yeah,
I would say perhaps his bench press is above average. Okay, so 700. That's from the legs. I'm gonna say my knee jerk is 900 pounds. And as soon as I said it, I was like, that's wrong. There's no way it's 900. There's no way, right?
That is much closer. Still off.
Right.
His bench press personal record in 2011 was 529 pounds.
Okay, so it's about half as much. So
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is 500 pounds is above superhuman, is what I'm hearing. If you're able
Yeah,
to get
it's
into the 500-pound range, then you're cool. This
Yeah.
is great. I think maybe my only base of comparisons is wrestlers and Marvel movies. So maybe that explains why my numbers are skewed here. So let's see
Okay,
if
that's so fair.
we can dial it back in for the deadlift.
Yeah, let's triangulate a little bit. So a deadlift is a lift where the bar and all the weights are on the ground, and the person is pulling it up.
To
Deadlift.
waist level. We're back to the legs, I think.
Legs and
So
arms and butt.
legs and arms and butt. And so when he was doing legs for the squat, that was 700 he could do. And so I kind of think it's more than a bench press. So I'm going to say 650 pounds.
It is 799 pounds that he was deadlifting. Isn't that wild?
It is. And
I mean,
think
can you tell that that's wild?
I can't tell that that's wild, but I do think I do want to underline here because I know I threw out some crazy high numbers, but to be able to pick up something that's 700 pounds is
crazy.
Wild, dude.
Yeah, our boy's yoked. We talk about how Kofi is a high flyer and Big E's just
the powerhouse.
Meat. He's just meat. I love it. Big E's.
I can't believe I said 8,000 pounds, by the way. I'm sorry. I cannot believe I said 8,000 pounds.
Hey, buddy. We learned today at the academy, okay? Don't be so
I know a lot
yourself.
about wrestling, but I don't know much else.
Well, look, you're the headmaster at Wrestling Academy and not Weightlifting Academy, so we're all good, dog.
Yeah. Clearly.
Okay,
all right.
Wait. So those personal records were set by Big E in 2011, and that was 2 years after he already started wrestling. So he started out at the Florida Championship Wrestling, or FCW, in 2009. That is one of WWE's developmental programs. And then eventually, FCW rebranded to NXT. At NXT, Big E took the NXT Championship away from Seth Rollins. He also earned the FCW Florida Tag Team Championship with Calvin Reigns. That name does not ring a bell. Michael, is that also Prince Albert?
All we know for sure about Calvin Reigns is he was not a rebranded Prince Albert from the 90s.
Perfect. That's all we need to know about Calvin. Another championship that Big E earned was the Intercontinental Championship once he moved up to WWE.
The one thing that I thought was cool about Big E is he had a real early on thing that his character would do where he would beat you. And then instead of when in a wrestling match, he would put you down and then they'd go 1, 2, 3. He would insist on them doing a 5 count.
I love that.
Very cool. And so it just went to show that he was a real dominant character.
I don't weigh 799 pounds. He would have no problem putting me down for more than a 3 count.
Yeah, he would have to bench press at least 2 of you. We don't need to get into if he needs to do a third. Who knows? Or a 4th.
6.
Okay. Yeah, same. Yeah, same for me.
All right, and let's move on to the third member of the New Day. Last but not least, Xavier Woods. So his real name is Austin Watson, which I love a rhyme. I love a rhyme or a slant rhyme. He does gaming content under Austin Creed. Spoiler alert, Xavier Woods is a big ol' nerd, and we love that. We love to see it. He was also known as Consequences Creed, Rashid Lucius Creed, and also King Woods. He started wrestling training in 2005 and wrestled in some indie promotions before appearing at TNA in New Japan. And then he debuted at FCW in 2010, and he debuted on TV with NXT in 2012. While he was in NXT, his gimmick was being a fanboy of the 90s, which isn't a far cry from his true life because Xavier, as I said, is a big ol' nerd, and we love that. So he has a gaming YouTube channel called Up, Up, Down, Down, where the New Day, after they debuted, were featured pretty heavily, and I think that did help them. even if they weren't wrestling, the guys were always around, like, on the internet too. So that was really lovely.
And it started independently, and then it was so popular that the WWE brought them in to basically be, hey, do this for us, do this under our banner. That, I think that also just goes to show that Xavier Woods, I've seen a lot of interviews with him because he also is splitting time between this, and I don't know if he still is, but he was working for G4.
Yeah.
And in his interviews, he was very much open to the fact that he said, once wrestling is done, I want to pivot into this as my career, which is why I focused on starting a secondary business where I play video games and I do pop culture and nerdy stuff, because that's the lane I'm trying to get into after my in-ring career is done. And he talked about talking to so many people who were a little bit more veteran in the game, and how they talked about having a really tough transition post wrestling. And so I think he just set himself up to have the best possible career. And I think that's just shows how savvy Xavier Woods is as a business minded person, where he's great at every single aspect and then also has his eye one step further than everybody else, I think. Because I think most people who are wrestlers love wrestling and only ever want to be a wrestler, and they don't think about how long a shelf life or how unpredictable a career that can be. And so I don't think I would be smart enough to, if I were a wrestler, to be like, but what am I going to do after this? I'd be like, I'm going to be a wrestler forever. I'm going to be Terry Funk. What are you talking about? And then I tear my ACL immediately. And then I'm like, hey, cool, Mike, you're out. I'd be like, shit.
What am I going to do?
I'll work at Subway. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
Well, lucky for me, Wrestling Academy is actually the thing that I have started outside of my in-ring career. Unfortunately, my in-ring career has ended before it started.
Damn.
Yeah, fuck. Also, that is really interesting, like thinking about what wrestlers do when they can't wrestle anymore. And it seems to me like everybody just acts or continues to wrestle at AEW. And Xavier also gained some championship gold for himself before entering into the New Day. He's got the Deep South Wrestling Heavyweight Championship. He's got the Florida Tag Team Championship with Wes Briscoe, and the TNA World Tag Team Championship with Jay Lethal. And I really only added those things in for all three guys just to show that they are all individually great wrestlers.
Yes, and I think the main distinction that I want to highlight here is that pre-New Day, Xavier Woods and Big E were much younger in the game than Kofi Kingston was. So Kofi was an established WWE talent by the time the New Day rolls around. But in all things being the same, I think a lot of people would consider Xavier and Big E as rookies, quote unquote. And so being able to get somebody who's had a 10-year career at this point on sides with them gave them a lot of legitimacy early on. So it was a very, very important pickup for them.
And now it's time for the part of the episode where I call wrestling cute. Kofi showed up in Xavier's early wrestling travels. Xavier went to the Deep South Wrestling building in 2007 to apply to be a wrestler, and Kofi just happened to be there in ring while he was there. And then they crossed paths again in 2010 when Xavier showed up at FCW offices applying to wrestle there too. Once again, wrestling is fucking cute.
So when Samee says applying to be a wrestler, he truly showed up with a paper resume and he looked for the manager, or the owner, or the boss to hand them a paper resume. Like, as a millennial, I've had my parents give me all kinds of pieces of career advice, which is, why don't you just show up and hand me your resume? And that never works. And Xavier Woods really legitimately tried it. He was an independent wrestler. He wanted to wrestle for Deep South. He wanted to wrestle for FCW. So he just had the wherewithal to walk in, resume in hand. And I think he has a pretty good sense of humor about the fact that they did not take his wrestling seriously. And I think he said when he applied at Deep South Wrestling, they were initially pretty impressed. So he went back to his indie friends and was like, hey, I think I'm going to get in with Deep South Wrestling. I think this is my ticket. And then 2 days later or something, they went out of business. And so he was just like, oh my God. And so 3 years later, he tries the same thing for FCW and was just he walked up and very clearly saw in the guy's eyes that the guy was about to throw his resume in the trash, but he still was like, here's my resume. I would like to be a wrestler, sir. And the guy was like, all right. And then Kofi was there for both of those.
Yeah, just like giggling in the corner, like, tee hee hee, I hope he gets in. So those are the guys before the New Day. Let's get into the start of the New Day, which I'll say it right now, they weren't well received initially.
They were pretty hated when they first debuted. It took people a little while to get on board with what the New Day was all about.
So in the July 21st, 2014 episode of Raw, Kofi and Big E are already paired together, and they lose pretty quickly against Ryback and Curtis Axel. And Xavier comes out in a white suit, and he's got a red shirt and I think a red tie as well. And he starts cutting this promo. It's like, everybody listen, I need you to pay attention to what I'm about to say. This is exactly what I've been talking about. You cannot move ahead by shaking hands, kissing babies, singing, and dancing like a puppet. You cannot move ahead by always doing what you're told. Now, this is our time. This is our place. It is time for us to find focus. It is up to us to find order. Together, it is our time to find purpose. Because we do not ask any longer. Now, we take. I took the emotion out of that, and I felt really weird, but I felt like continuing on in that manner. Michael, how are you feeling after that?
I feel stirred, Samee. Yeah.
Good.
No, he definitely didn't come out like a robot and go,
no,
a change will happen. He came out.
Because we do not ask any longer.
Yeah, we will now take. Wait, that's not what they did. So it was a lot more in line with a gospel Southern preacher gimmick, would you say? So his character was very much kind of a fire and brimstone sort of guy. So he came in with that kind of gusto.
And he carried that gusto on into the WWE main event on July 22nd. So it was really, truly the next day. And Xavier is back in the white suit, and Big E and Kofi are in the ring against Titus O'Neil and Slater Gator? ? Xavier is again on the ringside, and he is shouting and screaming directions, just like full force, trying to put fire into them. And it was really a pretty short match, but it felt like they were trying to solidify a thing. Xavier was going to be just pushing these guys to success. He was going to manage these guys to success. Except it wasn't. So people didn't really buy it. WWE Creative wasn't really behind that grouping. I don't really know what they were trying to go for. They didn't name it either. So they stopped being televised for a little bit until November 3rd, 2014, where all of a sudden in the program, we are shown a kind of a highly produced video of Xavier leading a gospel choir. And the end card says, "A new day is coming." And throughout the video, he's like, trying to rouse people up again, a little less intensely than he was at ringside, obviously. But he was still just like, let me say something. It's time to forget about the past. I said it's time to look to the future, and it's time to feel good, because this is a new day. And then we see another video, but it's Kofi this time with the choir. And he's kind of doing the same thing. He's leading the gospel choir. He's saying, "You're worried? We don't believe in worrying. We don't worry about pressure. There's no pressure. If there's no pressure, there's no diamonds, and we are going to shine brighter than any diamonds you've ever seen before." And then Big E also has this video package where he's with the choir. He's the only one in just a white V-neck, and I went, "Big E, where's your wardrobe, dog?" But he also says this stuff.
He's feeling it. He doesn't need wardrobe, dude. He's got...
Yeah. He's dabbing sweat off. So Kofi and Xavier are in blue. Biggie's in white, but he's dabbing his forehead with blue, a blue handkerchief or something. And he's doing the same thing. He's like, "Open your eyes and see your dreams in the distance. It's time for a new day." We're like, well, what is this stuff? And they started playing these vignettes. So it was like a whole month of these things playing. So November 28th, 2014, on SmackDown, we get another one of these vignettes, but they're all three together. Big E says, "Alone I was strong," and Xavier's like, "Alone I was smart," and Kofi says, "Alone I could fly, but together we can create a new day." And then they debut as this gospel team in blue, in the blues that were in the video. So their first match is a 6-man tag team match versus Titus O'Neil, Ryback, and Heath Slater. And the New Day, as I said, was in all blue and coordinated, and the walkout music is the gospel music that they featured in the vignettes. And it seemed like everybody was super into it. Everybody was clapping along. And the match itself, again, was like 3 minutes and 30 seconds long. But in that time, we saw all three guys working together. It looked really, really fun and energetic. Even though it was short, I could kind of tell that their in-ring relationship was really good, and it was pretty exciting to see. I think I asked you this before, but you didn't see any of the gospel stuff when it was airing live, right?
Yeah, I just know it was not well received.
Yeah, it really wasn't well received, and it was also partially just not tonally right for the guys themselves. So we've learned from the Rock episode that when the wrestlers aren't behind their gimmick, it becomes pretty obvious to the audience too, and it's just like not genuine. And so, yeah, they were really ill received. After a while, I think it maybe a year-ish, they turn heel. And what I really enjoy, and it because we've seen it before, is that when a gimmick isn't working for a wrestler, they just turn heel. They just turn into a bad guy.
What being a heel allows wrestlers to do is just explore who they are and how they come across to an audience. And so a lot of times you can find out what kind of performer you truly are, and then that gets people
Mm,
invested in you to be like, "Oh, we're now seeing sort of the authentic version of this. Is great. I like this." And then the things that they're doing that are supposed to be mean and dastardly are the things we come to respect and admire. And then they just start doing that stuff, but in a way that the thing we once booed, we now cheer. And
yeah.
that was sort of the deal with the New Day. They took every single piece of criticism levied against them, and they were able to turn it into things that are now things that people cheer.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in the spring of 2015, the New Day is consistently greeted by "New Day sucks." But while they're wrestling, they've kind of found this like clapping rhythm where it's like bump, 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 bump. And they do that when their teammates are needing like a boost or whatever. So they're slamming on the mat, bump, bump, bump. But then the damn audience picks up that rhythm and they start saying "New Day sucks," which it's really insulting. And like, I don't know how wrestlers don't get it in their head, like that stuff doesn't get into their head. Like, damn, like even just clapping, you guys.
It's super effective. So with John Cena's theme song, there's the ba ba da 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 da
Hmm.
da da. So people at the height of hating John Cena, it would be like, "John Cena sucks.
Oh man.
John Cena sucks." And so for years, he would come out and hit his stance, and it's "John Cena sucks." And then everybody was having so much fun, even after he became popular. People did it because they like him still, and so they're just like, "Well, this is fun. We want to play along." The other one is Kurt Angle, is one of my favorites. Is he had to become okay with this, but it did
Uh-huh.
not start that way. But so Kurt Angle's theme song is like very fanfare Olympic music, and then it builds to a bum 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 bum
Oh
bum
no.
bum. And so he would just come out and he's doing the thing, and then it gets to the bum bum, and it would just people being like, "You suck, you suck, you suck."
That
But
sucks so bad.
when he came back, but at the time, his character was a very villainous bad guy. And
Hmm.
so fans were doing what they were supposed to be doing, to be like, "We hate this
Right.
guy's evil." Ugh. But because he became so beloved and so popular, he would come away and then come back 10 years later and everyone's like, oh my God, Kurt Angle, we love you. And then to show him tribute, everybody would do the "you suck" lovingly.
Oh no.
And you could just see on his face, he's like, hey, they remember my thing. And I guess I'm okay with it. I don't know.
Oh, that's so tough.
But I agree with you, Samee. It would get under my skin where if people just started finding a way to tell me that I sucked in a chant, that would.
Yeah,
Oh.
right. Because like a wrestler, I'm assuming hopes that their theme song is catchy and is impenetrable, and then the audience is just so smart that they'll find a way to tell you you fucking suck. Oh man, what a double-edged sword.
Yeah. Can't be
All
too
right.
catchy out here.
You really can't be too catchy. After one match where the audience was saying, New Day sucks, an interviewer asked New Day, how are you guys feeling? How does that feel? And they were like, it's disappointing to hear, but you won't find disappointment in our dancing. You won't find disappointment in our singing. And you definitely won't find it in our clapping. We clap or we snap, which I gotta say, kind of a scary thing to hear from somebody who's, saying it through a smile.
Absolutely. Oh, I think that's the most chilling of all. Of just like, yeah, we clap or we're gonna snap, dude. And you're just like,
Ooh, fuck. And so this begins this whole thing where it's called I've seen it called fanatically obsessed with the power of positivity. But that is different than a 2024 term that we've heard called toxic positivity. So fanatically obsessed with the power of positivity. I feel like it is encapsulated by the we clap or we snap thing where they're just like, "Oh yeah, everything's totally fine. Everything's totally fine, right?" Like that
yeah,
kind of
actually,
vibe.
we're positive, so this doesn't bother us at all. Yeah, that's sort of what they're doing, I think. At this point, they're shifting from the bad guy gospel heels into something entirely different where, yeah, they're so obsessed with staying positive despite the overwhelming criticism they're receiving.
Right, exactly. So they're shifting over to that, but then after a while, I think people, because the New Day they're allowed to be themselves and released from this gospel gimmick, that they're allowed to just be themselves a little bit and be silly, and they're wearing neon now, and they have a lot of nonsense going on. And I kind of want to ask here is like, what do you think was so compelling about the New Day once they were released from their gospel shackles?
I think what it is when they were the gospel characters, I'm sure they were doing something that on a certain level was probably authentic to them in their lives at some point. Cause why would
Mhm.
you? Because this was the thing that Xavier Woods, this was his idea. And he brought this to
Mhm.
creative and was like, hey, I'm kind of taking a gamble. The three of us want to do a thing. And that was kind of unheard of because there's not a lot of 3-person groups. And there
Mhm.
certainly wasn't a lot of 3-person groups. So for him to be like, yeah, we want to do this thing, it's kind of a we're heels, we think we know better than everybody, and we just want to roll with these three guys. Like, can we give this a shot? And people were a little bit dubious, but they gave him the shot and the runway, and it wasn't working. And so I think on some level they picked something that was probably authentic to them, but in being bad guys, it gave them the freedom to show what their true personalities were. And then I
Mhm.
think they started to be entertaining, and they were able to change the New Day sucks to New Day rocks chant.
Yeah,
So
that's
that
great.
became a big thing. So now when people hit that duh, 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 now everybody cheers New Day rocks, New Day rocks. So they were
That's
able
great.
to change people's perception. And I think it was just the power of positivity started as a fake thing. But I think as they became more and more popular, I think it was just, hey, we're just three positive guys. We're three positive, fun
Right.
loving guys. And then that was a level of fun that everybody was able to have. So they were able to bring people in and on board. And so I think really they kind of had to go through this gauntlet to show the audience who they were and what they were all about. And then it was after a while, I think sometimes, especially in wrestling, something really new can come in and it'll be shocking, and it takes people a little bit of time to get acclimated to it, but then also for the performers to figure out who they are inside of it. And so I think it was just they had changed enough and had been out in front of the audience enough to where it like, oh, they get how to do it now, and the audience understands who they are now. Whereas before,
Mm.
the audience didn't get it and they didn't really know what to do. So
So they each have their own wrestling gear style. So Kofi and Xavier, they both have sleeveless vests, right? And they wrestle in pants, and they're kind of similar. But Big E wears like a traditional wrestling singlet under kind of a longer vest, right? I'm not
it's like a trench coat
super
vest
wrong.
kind of combo.
No zippers on any of these guys' costumes, but they're just so loud and bright. And I think we really did listen to the same Xavier Woods interview. But as far as costumes go, he was like, well, that was all planned for the merchandising of it all. So like when kids see just a brightly lit, colorful toy, they're gonna play with it no matter if they like the wrestler or not. So it's kind of a we're cool, you're gonna play with us, or we're colorful, you're gonna play with us type of thing. And so their merchandise sales were so high they rivaled like John Cena, Roman Reigns, Becky Lynch, which is quite a feat, I think.
What's interesting about what Sammy is saying, those people are all different eras. So
Oh.
the New Day was selling merch at a consistently high level. And I think with the New Day, they were also very smart about every couple of months they would refresh and they would have a new t-shirt. So they always were constantly releasing new cool New Day shirts that would fit with slogans they were saying, or
Mm.
they were like, "Oh, Halloween's coming up. Let's do some spooky New Day stuff." And they, I think they just were really smart in a business sense to be like, "Oh, we're popular, and also we can sell a lot of T-shirts if we switch it up." Because I think there are tons of wrestlers that I'm a fan of, but they've had the same T-shirt for a year, 2 years, and I was like, "All
Yeah.
right, well, I don't like the design, so I don't want to do it." Whereas at one point, I had 3, 4 New Day shirts because they kept coming out with new designs, and I kept being like, well, shit, I like that one too. And so
Yeah, that's so
they
smart.
got me several times.
And they didn't even have just t-shirts. At some point they started doing like unicorn stuff, so they had unicorn horns that they could sell. They were selling, well, I guess we'll talk about it right now. They were selling a cereal, Michael, and it was called Bootios. Why was it called Bootios? Because one of their catchphrases, and there's probably not a term for it, but like the catchphrase, like just like the bullying line that a wrestler uses to degrade their opponent or whatever. So they
It's
started
like a put
saying,
down.
yeah, a put down. That's great. So booty was also a put down that they used, but it was a negative thing. You don't be booty. So Bootio's slogan was Bootios. They make sure you ain't booty. And there's also New Day was gyrating a lot, and I think that also had something to do with booty. So they would like make sure you're not booty. It's just these guys were cartoon characters, and I feel like they put it on thick, but it was still not bad ever.
I think to maybe bridge every single kind of aspect of the change in presentation, the merch sales, right? I think there's a way you can paint it that it's bad, but I think what me and Sammy are trying to articulate is that the New Day were really good at understanding the business side of wrestling. And so
Mhm.
they were able to hit fun catchphrases that people could say, fun like movement and dancing that people could do and get on board with. And then their presentation was bright and colorful. Their music was cheery and upbeat. And then they were just happy, positive guys who were really fucking good at wrestling. And
Mhm.
so all of that stuff together made them the perfect storm of these dudes are so marketable. Why would you not
Mhm.
do anything with them? They're beloved. They've been selling merchandise, which is a very important thing in WWE. It's like, oh, they make a ton of money for the company and have very consistently for 5 years. And so why would you not do this stuff? Because they're very recognizable. And there was a point in time where they were recognizable outside of wrestling. And I think they were
Mhm.
definitely trying to experiment with where can we get the New Day? How can we have the New Day be ambassadors for us? Because so many people
Yeah.
love these guys beyond wrestling. So how do we keep them in the mix and help them get the word out about WWE? And again, I think from the interview me and Samee, it turns out we both watched,
Yep.
that was all by design. Again, that's all Xavier Woods is doing, and being like, oh, what are the things that help us become very appealing, right? Having cool catchphrases, cool merch, cool gestures that we can do, being good in the ring, being funny, and then being able to be funny for the child audience that's watching and the adult audience that's watching. So they're able to navigate all these different places, and it makes them very popular with everybody. And when you're popular with everybody, you're just popular.
Yeah, you're unstoppable. And there was a point where they kind of took a pause because there's a trombone. And we've talked about this trombone in the Hell in a Cell episode. And her name is Francesca. And this came about, I don't remember the event, but they were in New York. And Xavier Woods is a trombonist. He's a musician.
Lifelong. So in the 6th grade, he learned how to play the trombone.
Right. So he's like, "Can I have a trombone?" He asked a prop guy, and the prop guy came back and said, "Yes, of course you'd have a trombone." And I think that because the New Day was so untouchable, they got that trombone. And Xavier was only supposed to play the trombone for a little bit, so he learned burr, 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 burr.
Because the New Day was going to be in New York. And so they were like, oh, we'll tie it into the city we're in. And he's just supposed to play the trombone on the way to the ring and then hand it off to the prop guy.
And it turns out the prop guy didn't want him to give it to him. And they got word that everybody was cracking up backstage. So instead of the trombone being a one-time thing that they did a little bit once, they got to do the trombone for a very, very long time. They ended up with a Francesca 2 after it got broken. There was a bagpipe they named Agnes as Francesca's Scottish cousin. Like they were allowed to be so silly because I feel like it's like kind of one of those Ouroboros things where they were silly and they did good. They did good and they're silly. You know what I mean?
What I like about you saying, Samee, that they are able to be successful even when they're being silly. I think that's one of the secrets to why I think the New Day are so successful at what they do. But I really think what the New Day does better than any group I've ever seen, and I think this is why they're my favorite. And I sort of laid it out when I was talking about Xavier Woods, but I think better than anybody, whatever story they're in, they know just what to do. So when they find themselves in a situation where they need to be really serious, they'll be really serious. When they need to be super over the top funny, they'll be funny. When they need to be bad guys, they'll be bad guys. And they throw themselves in wholeheartedly. And I think wrestling, it's a game of egos, right? So the whole point is everybody is trying to present that they are the toughest, most credible wrestler that they can be. And they can beat any challenger. They can overcome any obstacle. And I think that leads to a lot of backstage. It's called no selling, right? So when you get hit, you sell the hit and you make it look like it hurt you. And I think a lot of times what wrestlers will defer to is not showing that they get scared or they get overwhelmed or they get hurt or whatever, because it makes their character, quote unquote, look weak, but then it makes the story nonsensical. So I think the best example of this is in 2016, the New Day was fighting this faction called the Wyatt family. And it was headed by Bray Wyatt, who is this sort of mysterious backwoods cult figure. He would carry a lantern and he had a Hawaiian shirt and had sort of a weird way of talking, man. But the more he talked, the more he kind of sounded like a cult leader who would make sense. And so it became this cool modern horror angle where it's really hard to explain outside of the context. Like if I were to just explain it to you, it would come across really weird. But then he recruited more people to it. So he had multiple members of his family, and they would all be these big, rugged, bushy beard, backwoods, hillbilly type of guys. And they were called the Wyatt family. And they basically operated like a cult. And then Bray Wyatt would cut these very cryptic, ominous promos in broken down cabins and talking into a lantern about Sister Abigail and what she showed to him and stuff like that. And it just came across as really creepy, or at least it should. But every time the Wyatt family would fight somebody, Bray Wyatt would do his creepy, cryptic thing. And most wrestlers would defer to, that doesn't scare me at all. Like,
Aw.
you're wearing a Hawaiian shirt. That looks pretty stupid, actually. And you're like, yeah, no shit. Everything looks stupid if you say it's stupid. Like, yeah, of course. But I get where they're coming from, because they don't want their character to be perceived as weak or stupid or scared. And so
Sure.
they're deferring to, even though this challenge is in front of me, I'm not going to blink and I'm going to be very tough. And then it would just lead to like, yeah, you win because of course you were going to win, but it didn't affect you at all. So there's nothing to it. So I think what was different, and so everybody would do that. Everybody would fight the Wyatt family. And I feel like they came across as a huge joke. Everybody's like, okay, cool. They're going to get in a weird feud with the Wyatts for a couple of weeks, and then they're going to beat the Wyatts, and then they're going to go do whatever. And everybody kind of thought that the Wyatt family was a joke, until they had this very short-lived feud with the New Day. And so it's another 3-on-3 group. And so they started doing this thing where Bray Wyatt, the leader of the cult, would be cutting those ominous, creepy, cryptic promos. And then the New Day would stand there, and you could just see on Xavier Woods' face that he's playing something this guy's saying is kind of making a little bit of sense to me. And you could just see him, like, you could just see it on his face, like him rolling it around. And for the first time, Bray's cryptic stuff just like took root inside of somebody, and he was just like, and he ended up like shaking it off, but it was just happening very subtly. Nobody ever called attention to it. And then backstage they'd be talking, and then Xavier would come in and be like, guys, we cannot take these guys lightly. Like, and they're like, no, man, they're just talking, they're just saying whatever. And so it got to the point where he would start to do it and get hypnotic, and you could see Woods like subtly in the background, like start to sway and start to be overtaken a little bit. And it's one of those things. It cost them nothing. The New Day still looks cool. And to say that that was a very short-lived angle, I think they ended up splitting them up. But in the moment, I just found myself being like, look, they took this group that everybody always treats like a joke, and were able to get just a little bit of character nuance by being like, oh, we're in a horror movie. Great. Okay, we know what to do. Like, maybe he's a cult leader, right? He's going to try to seduce us over to his side. And so what if I just toy with the idea that I'm entertaining it? What if I do that? What if I just am a little bit vulnerable with my character? And I think it led to something that's super watchable and was super interesting and cool. And I think that's what the New Day does better than anybody else, is they're able to take whatever the situation calls for and be exactly what it is. So they're so good that they can then use their talent to make everybody else look good too. When we were looking around trying to figure out what's a storyline that we could talk about for the New Day, we wanted to, I think, just first and foremost, if you want the absolute best rivalry that the New Day has had so far, definitely check out what they did with the Usos. And if you want a little more info on that, we covered that rivalry in our Hell in a Cell episode. So we get into that rivalry there. But we wanted to dig into something that was a different storyline that had a 3-person element to it, because we wanted to see the New Day at maximum strength. And that's kind of a tall order because there aren't a lot of 3-person groups in the WWE. So we're talking about the New Day versus the Shield at Survivor Series 2017. So to understand this feud a little bit, we need to first know who's the Shield. So the Shield, I'm going to keep this as brief as I possibly can, because the Shield 100% deserves their own episode, because these guys are infinitely fascinating and infinitely decorated. So it is a insanely popular 3-person group that is made up of Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, and Seth Rollins, all at the beginnings of their careers. So if those names are familiar to you at all, it's because these guys have, for the past 10 years, been pretty much the highest watermark you can achieve in the world of wrestling. They've done everything you can do inside of the WWE. And then Dean Ambrose, who is now Jon Moxley outside of the WWE, is one of the top guys in AEW. So ever since they debuted, they've been the tippy top of everything that's possible. And so the Shield is where these guys started. And so this is the very first thing they did was they were a 3-person faction that basically captured the imagination of everybody in pro wrestling as soon as they debuted. So these guys have been popular forever, and the very first thing they did out was an insanely popular 3-person group that was a callback, or that was sort of a throwback, because there hadn't been a lot of factions like this. And Samee, so you watched a little bit of the Shield making their debut and cutting their promo. How would you describe them based on what you saw early on?
The Shield is basically as silly and as bright and shiny the New Day is. The Shield is serious. So they're all in black. They've got tactical vests. They've got tactical pants. I think they even have like hand wrappings, and they each have their individual way to hand wrap and stuff. They're like wrestling assassins, kind of. They feel like they don't belong in the regular wrestling locker room.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's 100% what they were going for. And even down to their presentation, Sammy's right. They're dressed in all black tactical gear, and they would come out from the crowd and they would hop the barricade and just start jumping people in these 3-on-1 attacks that at the time didn't really make any sense. And they were just incredibly vicious. Apparently on screen and off, they were just a complete unit with a singular vision. I remember hearing in a John Moxley interview that he was talking about, again, that game of egos like we're talking about. They're brand new guys. And so when they come out and beat somebody up, the ego might want to, and this is a thing sometimes veterans do to younger performers, is just like, oh, I'm gonna look like this didn't hurt me at all. I'm gonna look like I'm actually, even though I'm getting jumped by 3 guys, I'm going to show that my character's tougher. And so they all agreed. They're like, they're not going to be selling. They're going to be feeling what we do. And so they would jump the barricade and just really lay it in pretty thick to be like, you will do what's being asked of you if we're the ones doing it. And apparently, they were like, if we didn't like a creative decision that was getting made, we made the agreement all 3 of us would go confront whoever, because it's real easy to turn down one person, but it's real hard to turn down 3 people. So that's how they operated when they were a group. And then the Shield themselves, what I always thought was very interesting is they called themselves, they were the Shield of Justice over the WWE. So they operated like vigilantes, and so they would enact their justice onto people. But it always seemed like, I don't know if these people did anything wrong. I think you guys just decided they needed justice and you would dole it out to them. That's sort of how they were presented. But in ring, I think their presentation was very different than anything I had ever really seen before, because they operated as a unit. And so they were not interested in the individual ever. And so they would be hyper aggressive and they would start fighting whether they had the odds or not, and just sort of trusted, like, if I start fighting, one of the other 2 is going to probably jump in and bail me out. Or if not, it's because they're busy. Or, oh, if it's going to help us win if I take the hit. And so I'll take the hit, and that'll allow my teammate to be able to finish the job. And so they were always very singularly focused on the unit of the Shield. And again, just a hyper organized, hyper vicious group that had a countercultural presentation. Of course it's going to be popular. And like we said, these guys are some of the greatest wrestlers of the modern era. And so it's just like, oh, you've got the greatest wrestlers doing the coolest stuff. These dudes are so popular. They debut in 2012 and they run super hot for 2 years. And then the group shockingly and tragically explodes apart when one of the members of the Shield, Seth Rollins, very shockingly turns on his teammates and he betrays them and hits them with chairs. And it's truly sucked the air out of the room. And they try to, so Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns, they try to keep it going afterwards. But once Seth leaves, that's pretty much the end of the Shield. So by June 24th, 2014, the Shield burned bright, burned out, and everyone was super bummed. And it led to this massive heel run for Seth Rollins. So he kind of got out right at the right time, and that's what transformed him to the Seth Rollins we all know today. Is he was in the hottest group, and then he became the biggest heel by betraying that group, and then his career took so many twists and turns, and then Roman Reigns became the Roman Reigns we all know today. And then Dean Ambrose, I think he struggled the most out of the three, but then when he went to AEW, all of a sudden this guy's at the top of the card in AEW. So he was able to find success when he found creative frustration. So all that's happening. June 24th, 2014, officially the Shield is done. July 21st, so a month later, 2014, the New Day debuts, meaning these groups miss each other by about a month. And like we said, it took a couple of years for them to get the New Day fully right. So even if they had tangled back then, it wouldn't have been impressive. But suffice it to say, 3-person group versus 3-person group, that is a dream match that we never got to have happen. And everybody was super bummed about it.
Could you imagine the Gospel New Day versus the Shield?
Dude, I think the Shield would have been ugly.
Oh God.
Or even the original, like, power positivity or we snap. You're like, dude, I don't know if you want any part of the Shield, man. Like,
that's okay, dude.
Yeah, snap. Those are not some positive guys. They're pretty negative, some would say. So New Day, Shield miss each other by about a month. The members of the Shield go on to individually have the careers they have. The New Day goes on to become one of the most successful tag teams in the WWE. About 3 years later, in the summertime, so April 2017, Dean Ambrose, member of the Shield, is traded to Raw. And that just happens to be the same brand that Seth and Roman Reigns are on. And so, like we said, Seth, he became a super big heel, right? A bad guy. And he went on to do all kinds of crazy things. And I think for his character, the chickens were kind of coming home to roost. And he realized that, hey, maybe I don't want to be this bad guy anymore. And so April 2017, he approaches Dean Ambrose to be like, hey, man, I kind of feel like I need my brothers back. What do you say we try to get the Shield back together? And Dean Ambrose is pretty rightfully mad. He's like, no, dude, did you not remember what you did to us 3 years ago? Like, Dean specifically witnessed this all happen. And so he's just like, dude, absolutely not. I don't want to have anything to do with you. And so all summer long, they're doing this will they, won't they thing between Seth and Dean, where Seth is trying to do his thing. Then people will come in and outnumber him. And then Dean Ambrose will run back in and he'll make the save. And then afterwards be like, okay, look, dude, I'm not going to bail you out again. Like you hurt me. You crossed the line so much. And by the end of the summer, they very uneasily get back into a tag team and they start making it work again. And they're able to get the tag team champion. And I guess, Samee,
yes,
I just want to check in with you. How would you classify yourself? Like, would you say you're a forgiving person like Dean Ambrose?
It really depends. It depends. I think it really depends on how big the betrayal is.
Okay, well, let me lay out a hypothetical situation for you.
Okay.
Wrestling Academy becomes the most popular wrestling podcast ever. And right at the height of our popularity, I hit you in the back with a chair and very dramatically quit Wrestling Academy to join a rival podcast. How many years do you think it would take you to get it to forgive me?
I don't know, man. I feel like maybe I would forgive you, but maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years.
Okay. So if you say 3 years, that's the exact amount of time it took Dean Ambrose to forgive Seth Rollins.
Sure. Okay. Cool.
So, Samee, you are exactly the Dean Rollins, exactly the Dean Ambrose of the situation.
Okay, I'll take it.
So by the fall, they're tag teaming again. But here's the thing: the Shield, it's not a 2-person team; it's a 3-person team. So now they start being like, we need Roman Reigns, we need the big dog back in the mix, and then and only then can the Shield fully reunite. So by the time we get to the October 9th episode of Monday Night Raw, Roman Reigns officially rejoins the Shield, and they're all set to do a match October 22nd at TLC. But there's a problem, Samee.
What's the problem?
Roman Reigns gets sick and he can't do the match.
Oh no, Roman.
So they're building to the big Shield reunion, and Roman Reigns can't do it. And it's a super big bummer. And here's something I want to say just outside of the story that I'm telling. I watched this live, and this was one of those stories that fans were very upset by for a number of reasons. And the main one was just a string of real life injuries got in the way of all the creative plans that they were doing. So ever since the Shield broke up, everybody wanted the Shield to get back together. They were like, look, these guys broke up. They're all super popular. It's going to feel so great when they finally do a reunion. And now here we are 3 years later, finally getting the reunion that we want. And then people are getting injured. And it's like, all right, well, we can't fully exactly do the Shield. So it's a huge bummer. And so that was a thing that plagued this storyline. But I think all things considered, with all the pieces they had available to them, I think this is actually still a pretty cool and worthwhile story. We get to TLC, and instead of the Shield, it is Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, and Kurt Angle. And Kurt Angle comes to the ring, and it truly is just, he's smiling ear to ear, and it truly felt like they made his wrestling dream come true. And it was just like, who let their dad come down to the ring? He just came down like in the tactical vest, like, like, this is so fun. Oh yeah. He went full Shield. He was so excited to wrestle and be in the Shield with them, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't what we wanted.
Sure.
After TLC, the next night, like we said, there are major events that happen in the WWE. So the big one in November is called Survivor Series. And in 2017, they were very much playing up Raw versus SmackDown. And they had as the figureheads, they had Stephanie McMahon was the owner of Raw, and then Shane McMahon was the owner of SmackDown. And so it was sibling rivalry between the two, and that's what was motivating them. Stephanie appoints a general manager. Shane appoints a general manager. So the general manager of Raw is Kurt Angle, who was just a member of the Shield the night before. And he comes out and he's like, all right, everybody, Survivor Series is coming up. And I'm excited to announce the team I'm going to have to take on Team SmackDown. He's like, all right, guys, here we go. And then all of a sudden, Shane McMahon, who's not a member of Raw, he's a member of SmackDown. So the owner of the rival promotion comes out through the crowd, and he's being flanked by the New Day, dressed in all blue. And they're not joking around, power of positivity, guys. They're looking pretty ready to take care of some business. And they come down. And then behind the New Day is the rest of the SmackDown roster. And then they all come down, they hop the barricade, they surround the ring, and Kurt Angle's kind of like, I kind of thought we were all just, I thought we were just doing Survivor Series. I thought we were joking around. And then Shane grabs the microphone from him, and he just looks him in the face and goes, under siege. And then he points to the SmackDown roster, and then the New Day leads the rest of the SmackDown roster, where they rove through the backstage area, just finding WWE superstars who are Raw affiliated and being like, oh, hey, dude, how's it going? And then just slamming them into metal fences. And then 8 guys pile on top of them and just start beating the crap out of them.
That's wild.
Go into the women's locker room, and they have the like women of SmackDown be like, all right, you fucking take care of this. And then you would just like, so out of the crowd, like 5 women popped out. They're like, you! And then,
Becky, like, you can see Becky Lynch's highlighter orange hair just like fly across the screen.
Yeah. And this is 1 year before she becomes the man. So she's just happy to be there. So it's just like, everybody is fighting everybody. They grab Kurt Angle and they drag him back to the ring. And Shane McMahon is basically just like, so this is what we're bringing to the table. What do you guys got? And then they all leave. And so SmackDown, so it's to me, it felt like Kurt Angle, he's the general manager. He doesn't really have a dog in this fight. He's just sort of a middleman. And then he's just like, all right, guys, we're going to wrestle. We're going to do our best. And then the rival shows up to be like, we're going to kill you.
Yeah, that's a lot. What would you do if your boss was like, hey, Michael, we're going to go next door and we're going to beat up everybody that works next door. You cool?
Here's the thing. I sort of, as a general rule, don't go above and beyond for any job I do, because if you do more, they expect more. But above everything, I'm a wrestling fan. And the number one thing wrestlers love to do is invade other places. And so for me, it would be like, you want us to go to the Starbucks next door and beat up the rival Starbucks? That sounds cool. That sounds really cool. Like, that sounds
You got
really
your brass
fun.
knuckles out of your green apron.
Yeah, exactly. Just yeah, that would be so fun. But in the real world, if it was really a job and my boss asked me to be like, hey, we're gonna go invade the rival we're gonna go invade the rival office building and just beat the shit out of everybody. I'd be like, yeah, dude, no, I quit. I don't want to do this. What about you? What would you do, Samee?
I unfortunately would be in the front lines. I would be Biggie right behind my boss, ready to go.
You're like, I love capitalism. This is so fun.
Actually, they do stink over here.
Yeah. Is it that you like work or you like fighting?
It's because I don't know how to create boundaries, especially with work, and work being a good employee or being a good little boy is was something that was burned into my brain early on. And so if it's my mom or if it's my boss, it's the same type of gung ho, we can do anything behavior.
So SmackDown invades Raw, beats everybody up, and Raw doesn't do anything. They just carry on business as usual for 2 weeks. They don't do anything. And then we get a tag team title match between members of the Shield. So we've got Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins representing the Shield, and they're fighting a tag team called The Bar, which is Sheamus and Cesaro. And Cesaro is now Claudio Castagnoli in AEW, but is Cesaro in the WWE. And so they're doing a big tag team title match. And then in the middle of the match, SmackDown hops the barricade again, and then the New Day just starts an all-out brawl. And then this time, Raw is a lot more prepared. So SmackDown and Raw are just clashing and fighting. But here's the thing: normally when that happens, the match gets pretty quickly thrown out and called off. The match keeps going, so there's a riot happening while this tag team match is still happening. And so I think,
oh my god.
So then I think the Shield is like, what the hell? And then they get taken out by the Bar. They lose the tag team title match, and then they leave. So then the next night on SmackDown, the New Day is standing around the owner, Shane McMahon, being like, we invaded them. What did they do? Nothing. It's like, what are they going to do? Nothing. Like, they got nothing, dude. And so just baiting and being like, we invaded them twice. And they didn't do anything, man. Like, we could do whatever we want. Like, it's like everybody's so stoked about the Shield, but they didn't seem all that impressive to us. And I think what you'll notice, Samee, is the New Day, they're being bad guys right now. They're really coming across like jerks. And so the next week on Monday Night Raw, Stephanie McMahon, owner of Raw, is yelling at manager Kurt Angle, being like, this is not what I put you in charge to do. Like, you're really letting me down. And then all of a sudden, the Shield's music plays, and all 3 members of the Shield come out of the crowd and surround the ring. And Roman Reigns grabs the microphone. And he's like, we don't care about any of what you guys are talking about. We want the New Day at Survivor Series. And everybody is like, yes, like, yeah.
The New Day.
Yeah, we love this. We think this is great. So the next night, so that's November 13th, the Shield officially reunites and they officially call out the New Day. And then November 14th, SmackDown, the New Day has a match against Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. And while that's happening, the Shield pop out of the crowd and they circle the ring. And so the New Day are like, they see they're completely surrounded. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens look around and they're like, all right, there's 5 of us and 3 of them, but this actually doesn't have anything to do with us. So Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn roll out of the ring and leave. so you can see the New Day being like, what the hell? And so now it's just New Day versus Shield. Shield hop the barricade and everybody's fighting. Like, more members of SmackDown roster come out. Tag team champs. Sheamus and Cesaro hop the barricade, and then it becomes this all-out melee between every single member of like the SmackDown roster and the Raw roster. So when we head into Survivor Series, we are at a fever pitch. But what I
Mhm.
really want to say is us, the fans, finally get to have this dream match where we have the Shield fully back together versus the New Day at the height of their power. So we're walking into Survivor Series, and Samee, this is the
Yes.
very first match on the card. So these
Whoa.
guys are just walking into a powder keg.
That's crazy. That's some smart booking, I think. Because
I
Survivor
think so
Series is gonna
too.
be that Raw versus SmackDown, like, oh, Raw won this, Raw won one, SmackDown won 0, like that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's definitely the vibe of the night. But we're
Mhm.
starting with a dream match that has been escalated to the point where these guys are out for blood. And I gotta say, it's pretty rare to see the New Day be able to fully fight all three guys versus all three
Mm.
guys. So you're watching two elite 3-person teams fight each other. And I think everybody is just operating at such a high level. This match is so fun and so fast paced, and I think really goes to show the ethos of the New Day is fighting the ethos of the Shield. But what I really appreciate, if you really watch it, is the entire match. The New Day is wrestling like bad guys, like the guys
Mm.
you want to root against, because they understood that this moment of the Shield coming back is huge. And this is what the fans want. And so by them being the bad guys, you get to root for the Shield. And so they're
Sure.
doing every single dastardly thing at their disposal. They have this move that I absolutely love called the Unicorn Stampede, which sounds very goofy and silly, but here's what they do.
What is it?
So, in a tag team match, if you hit somebody, you get it's a 5 count and then you get disqualified. So if you throw somebody in the turnbuckle and then you just start beating on them, you get 5 seconds and then you're disqualified. So what the New Day does is they get around that rule by they throw somebody in the corner and then just start stomping them out. It goes 1, 2, 3, foot, somebody tags in. And then they swap. And then the next guy, 1, 2, 3, foot,
Oh
somebody
my
tags in. And then
god.
they swap. And so they do the unicorn stampede on Dean Ambrose. It
Oh.
feels like for a minute straight. They are just stomping his
Oh
ass
my
out
god.
for a full minute, and it's just so wild. And then again, you see the Shield doing their pack tactics where they're like, "Look, in a normal tag team match, we have to stay on our side of the ring. We can't leave." But as soon as they see that they're just isolating Dean Ambrose, you can see Roman and Seth look at each other like, "Are we doing this?" And they go, "All right." And they both hop off the ring apron and they flank the ring, and then they pull the two guys off the apron and just everybody starts fighting on the outside.
Oh my
And they're
god.
doing this all without anybody checking in with anybody to be like, "Oh, if we want Dean to be able to fight, we have to start breaking the rule." And so they just completely like a unit start doing it, and then it becomes an all-out melee. Everybody's doing it. The fans are especially vocal at this time in WWE in
Mm.
wrestling history. This is at the height when we talk about the WWE not caring about what the fans think. We're right at the height of this, and you can hear that. So every time they would get a near fall, so they go 1, 2, and then the audience would go 2, sweet, and that's a reference to the Elite. That's the reference to New Japan. That's a reference to Bullet Club. They're yelling that to be like, I know we're at the WWE, but we're actually referencing New Japan. They don't care. But from even fans who are like this hostile against the WWE, they start chanting, "This is awesome," not once, but twice in this 20-minute match.
Wow.
And there's this absolutely breathtaking move where I think Seth gets up on the apron and then you just see Big E charge at him full force and just tackle him through the
Oh
ropes,
my
and they go
god.
outside. And so you're watching Big E is 300 pounds. And so you watch him go full force and then fall like 6 feet out of the ring. And he just like lands hard on his shoulder and his head and his neck. And he rolls and
Oh.
he does it. And it was just the New Day took it to such a vicious level that they don't normally do. And it felt like because they were fighting the Shield, who are all about the business, you got to see the New Day really be an extra vicious next level up. And so they're doing their thing. At one point, Big E loads up both Dean and Seth over his two
Of course
shoulders.
he
And
does.
then And then Kofi and Xavier hit Kofi's finishing move. And so it's like they do a double finisher. They take everybody out. And then right when they're going for the pin, Roman Reigns runs in and he spears Big E and he spears him directly onto the pinfall and breaks it up. And this is at the height of people really not liking Roman Reigns. And so the audience is having a war with themselves where they're like, we love the Shield, but we hate what they're doing with Roman Reigns. And so you would see the Shield start to pick up momentum, and then it would be like, all right, and here comes Roman, and everyone's like, fuck you. Like, we don't like you, man. Like, we really don't want to deal with this. So it builds to this final segment where they get everybody outside of the ring and they hit their finishers on him. So they isolate him. And then they take Kofi up. They put him up in the signature Shield move, the triple power bomb. They power bomb him off of the top rope. So like not only are they triple power bombing him, they're triple power bombing him. They've climbed the turnbuckle. They slam him into the ground. And then they get the 1, 2, 3. And the Shield is able to pick up the victory.
Holy shit. Holy shit. That's something else. I feel like, that snap that the New Day kind of threatened. I think this match was them snapped.
This whole storyline, like I said, the Shield reunion plagued with injury, and the booking kind of felt a little bit rushed. I remember people watching this week to week being really frustrated, being like, the Shield reunion just doesn't make any sense. And this rivalry between Raw and SmackDown doesn't really make any sense. And I think what I like about this podcast is I had those feelings when I watched this in 2017, but when I got to go back and revisit the feud and see the story as it was laid out, I actually really appreciated what was going on. And I think it built to a real fever pitch that when we got to this match, it added so much extra weight. So it was like, not only was it a dream match, they were able to really quickly, within inside of a month, make it into a dream grudge match where these guys had a real beef to want to fight each other. And it was really cool to be able to see, the Shield. They've got the powerhouse, Roman Reigns. It's like, okay, well, New Day, we got a powerhouse too. And then you got to see the two of them. And then it's like, okay, Dean Ambrose, he's kind of the mouthpiece. It's like, guess what? New Day's got the mouthpiece too. Xavier Woods, here we go. And then you're like, oh, we've got the high flyer. We've got the technician. We got Seth Rollins. And New Day's like, we got that too. We got Kofi Kingston. And so they had an answer for every single one of what the other one did. And they were able to just like mix those together and play around. And everybody involved in this match is just at the top of their game. Some of the most popular wrestlers ever of all time. And it was just so nice to be like, oh, this was a match. We missed it by a month. We never got to have it. And then here we are 3 years later. We finally got to have it. So exciting. Felt so great to go back and rewatch.
Do you remember who you were rooting for night of?
Probably the Shield, if I'm being honest. Because I was just, I was
you bought into the tactical vest?
I was a huge Shield guy back in the day. I didn't love, the Shield did a thing where it was half Shield shirt, half Raw shirt.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, I didn't love that. But again, the New Day, they came in and they were being super heelish. So Dean Ambrose was on the ground and Big E just looks down and he rips his shirt off of him and he just throws it away. And everybody's like, it just made you not like the New Day. But again, they were doing what was best for the story. They knew that people wanted the Shield reunion for 3 years. And they were just able to be like, yeah, we're so popular. We can absolutely let everybody have their moment with the Shield after giving you literally a dream match. And I would say, unfortunately, the Shield reunion was pretty short-lived because pretty quickly after this happened, Dean Ambrose got legitimately injured and they had to basically put the Shield on pause again. And then they would kind of reunite sporadically, but then Dean Ambrose ended up fully leaving the WWE and joining AEW. So the Shield reunion at this point seems very unlikely. And later that year, the New Day would go on to host WrestleMania. Then they would chase the SmackDown tag titles against the Uso, culminating in a Hell in a Cell match. And if you want to know a little bit more about that, definitely check out our Hell in a Cell episode where we get into that. And then in 2019, the New Day goes on a little bit of a hiatus because Kofi Kingston gets a very very unlikely shot at the WWE title. But Samee,
Yes.
that's a story for a different day.
Ooh, teaser.
That's the New Day. We talked about where they came from. We got to get into them giving us a dream match in the middle of our career. Like, what were your takeaways? What were your thoughts? What are some things that stood out to you?
Well, I think I really enjoyed getting into this because since we started talking wrestling, you mentioned the New Day as just a faction that you really loved, and you also talked about the Shield that way too. So to know that they met and to know that they met so well, I think was really exciting. Takeaways? I don't know. Be yourself. Be a unicorn. Stomp on people with your buddies.
Yeah, definitely stomp on people with your buddies. I think the main thing that jumped out to me is a couple of things. So,
Mm,
one, wrestling, because it's live entertainment at the end of the day, it's all about timing. And sometimes, no matter what you want, the timing just isn't right until it is. And so with the Shield reunion, for example, I think a lot of people were really disappointed because at the time that it made the most sense to get these guys back together, just so happened to be a time where everybody was getting injured. That's just how it goes sometimes. And so they weren't able to get the match that they wanted. And I truly believe that through sheer force of will, the New Day is what held that entire thing together. They were
mhm,
able to take the booking that didn't make a ton of sense, honestly, and they were able to make it a thing. They were able to slide exactly into the perfect role that would be perfect for the Shield. And then when they got in the ring, they were able to dial up the intensity to meet the Shield on their level and then
mhm,
also wrestle in a style that made them the bad guys so that audiences wanted the Shield to win. So they took this thing that could have been catastrophic and I think they were able to prove that, like, hey, we can do exactly what the Shield does. And also, we could be the hosts of WrestleMania. I
yeah,
truly don't think that I don't think the Shield is capable of being funny like the New Day is, but the New
right.
Day is definitely capable of being serious and funny and scared and good in the ring. And so it's like I think they just proved that, like, we're so good, we can do anything that anybody else can do and
Oh,
also what we do. And so
I love that.
I think that was the thing that stood out to me the most about the Shield dream match is, like, one, this is a dream match. I was just thankful to have it because had we gone a couple weeks one way or the other, we wouldn't have been able. Had that happened at TLC, we wouldn't have gotten that dream match. Had it happened even 1 week later, we wouldn't have gotten that dream match. So it happened at just the exact right time for us to
Mm,
get the exact right match we needed. But then the New Day were the exact right opponents because they knew just what to do. And I think it just shows why they're my favorites is they were able to be like, oh, we're in a match with a super serious thing. Well, we'll just be super serious then. And then they did it. And then a couple weeks later, like, all right, and then we'll host WrestleMania, we'll do Bootios, we'll do Pancakes, and everybody will laugh and think it's great. And so it's like they can do, yeah, that's what I love the most about New Day is they can do what anybody does, but I don't think anybody can do what they do. And I think that's why they're
yeah,
so special.
yeah. Don't discount your goofy friends. The New Day is incredibly versatile.
I think it could go either way.
Just like the New Day. All right, babies. That was our episode of Wrestling Academy on the New Day. I'll throw an ask out. If we have any artists who are listening to this podcast, please send a rendition of the New Day in the Shield gear and then also the Shield in New Day gear. And send that over to wrestlingacademypod@gmail.com.
And if I could get even a little bit more specific with the prompt, when you do the Shield, could we make Seth's hair two-tone so he's got the black and blonde going?
Gotta have two-tone Seth, and we gotta have brown eyes Roman Reigns.
Yeah, those are our only asks. We don't ask much.
We really don't. This is a free show. But thank you for listening to Wrestling Academy, hosted, produced, and edited by Michael Klasek and Samee Junio. Follow on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Wrestling Academy Pod, and send us an email at wrestlingacademypod@gmail.com.
Yeah, and if you could follow, rate, and leave us a positive review wherever you get your podcast, that would be super helpful to us. And be sure to check us out on Spotify, where we have a Q&A or poll for every single episode. And I think this one, for me, who's your favorite member of the New Day? We would love to know. And I think we're even going to include an option of all three equally, because I think that's tough to choose. But if you got a favorite, let us know, and let us know why. And please, this is getting serious here. If you have any information on Ween Kid, please go to our website, wrestlingacademy.university, and send us a tip. It can be anonymous. So send us an anonymous tip, or call the Ween Kid tip line and leave us a voicemail at 708-669-4512. Ween Kid's out there. The truth is out there, and we're not going to rest until we find him.
Hashtag who is Ween Kid?
Who's Ween Kid? But until then, class dismissed.
Class is dismissed.